Andor is exactly what the Star Wars franchise has been needing. On paper, Star Wars Andor isn't necessarily the most exciting new project to emerge in the Star Wars franchise. It's a series that acts as a prequel to a prequel, kind of like a green within a green, Inception. It features no epic battles between Jedi and Sith, nor many familiar faces from the movies beyond the title episode hero himself. It's a very different show from the likes of Obi-Wan, Kenobi, and the Book of Boba Fett, and that's exactly why it's such a breath of fresh air for the franchise. And I agree. It is like I said over here. It is something new, and one of the best selling points of Rogue One, along with what may well be the most thrilling space combat in this franchise history, was the chance to see the unsung heroes of the galaxy rising up to the battle of the Empire. Yeah, and that's something that I agree with, that we got. I think this is where Star Wars needs to do more, and so doing all the legacy characters, Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan, Boba Fett, and stuff. I think that's why the Mandalorian works so well. That's why I think Rogue One works so well as this. I think it will work because we don't have these, legacy characters that, someone like Ryan Johnson or whoever are gonna ruin and mess up. Again, maybe that doesn't sound terribly exciting in concept, but in practice, there's something special about seeing such intimate glimpse into the struggle faced by the ordinary citizen of the galaxy far, far away. Even more than Rogue One or Star Wars Rebel, Andor shows us what it's like to cry and live in the era of the Galactic Empire and the many sacrifices that had to be made before the rebellion could truly come to be. Yeah, we don't, especially now, we didn't get, because Disney threw out the original canon, so now we don't really know anything. I mean, there was books and stuff and comics before that kind of told, but not many. And I kind of going back from earlier on, that I think this is something that, instead of expanding on legacy characters, maybe we should expand the characters around them, and I think that's where Disney probably should go with. The Mandalorian break major ground in 2019 as a false live-action Star Wars series, as we learned with the abandoned Star Wars Underworld series that a feat even George Lucas couldn't pull off. The Mandalorian and his fellow Disney Plus shows have managed to recreate that Star Wars aesthetic on the smaller screen, largely through the help of the volume, a digital set which projects detailed background and lighting against a video wall. But particularly the Book of Boba Fett, the limitation of the volume has become apparent. Sometimes there's just no substitute for having actors accompany real physical spaces with a fully built sets. Yeah, I mean it looks great and all, but sometimes you can, I'm myself can pick up on it. I'm in even watching the Batman, and there was some times I felt like I know something, but it's very hard to spot. But sometimes I myself always like the more realism stuff, making sets that the actors can touch and feel. I feel like could give them more, character, help with the character to be in instead of being in front of a giant projector, video, or green screen. But even as Andor captured the grimy side of Star Wars, it's also succeed in blazing its own stylistic trail. The first 3 episodes are basically Star Wars by way of Blade Runner and neo-noir take on the universe with a vibe all its own. Even the music is a far cry from the traditional march and fanfare of John Williams. Nicholas Bredell may not be the false name to come to mind for a Star Wars series, but his music truly captured the unsettling, stylish tones the series is going for. I really did like the music in it, but this probably wasn't the composer's fault, more editing stuff, editor's fault, director's fault. In episode 3, and I'm trying not to spoil it, I won't tell you what happened, but there is a big action scene. Well, in any movie ever, when there's a huge action scene, that's when the music starts to kick in. That's when the music really gets into it and makes you get into it. There was no music whatsoever. All you hear was pew pew pew, pew 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 pew, and that was it. I mean, literally, that was all it was. And moving away from Star Wars saga, Star Wars Andor works because it makes such a point of distancing itself from the Star Wars saga movies and all the tropes and expectation that goes along with them. It's a clean break for a franchise that usually goes preoccupied with the same handful of characters. Andor is like The Mandalorian Season 1 in that it a Star Wars spin-off that requires no familiarity with the larger franchise. Make no mistake, this is definitely all intentional. Gilroy recently told IGN the goal is specifically to avoid fan service or overloading the stories with pointless Star Wars cameos. We will be introducing people along the way, Gilroy said at D23. I don't think it's any secrets that Forrest Whitaker is in the show. Saw Gary I think I'm saying that right, is in the show. There will be some other people, but when we bring them because we need them and because there's really some protein there and there's something for them to really do. Even The Mandalorian became sidetracked in Season 2 with the last minute appearance of Luke Skywalker. Luke then went on to play a fairly substantial role in Book of Boba Fett, drawing both shows closer to the Skywalker family orbit. Meanwhile, a young Princess Leia turned out to be a critical character in Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi, a series steeped in the Skywalker / Kenobi and loose ends from the prequels. Andor is one of the few Star Wars projects out there blazing its own trail and telling a story with no Skywalker family connection. So yeah, and in some way I like that, because I do feel like, not just the Star Wars, Skywalker thing, like Season 2 of The Mandalorian, we started getting, way too many characters from other Star Wars stuff, and the Clone Wars, the Rebels and stuff. It's cool to see Ahsoka, because she is a huge thing. To me, I felt like it was Season 2 of The Mandalorian was basically just a commercial for new spin-off series. And it's like, oh, here's a new character from the Star Wars Rebel. Here, they gonna get their spin-off. Here's another character from the Clone Wars. They get their spin-off. Here's someone from the original trilogy that we didn't really see much of. They get their own thing. It's like we got so many spin-offs now that it's like, you don't want to become like Marvel. But my thing about I feel like both these writers of these articles feel like just because it connects to Skywalkers, that makes it bad. I'm like, no, it's just that they writing characters like Luke Skywalker bad, and it makes it bad. Obi-Wan should have been so much better. He's just as important as Luke Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker, Princess Leia, so it should have been a much better series than what that was. But because they went and hired a writer who admitted that he never even seen Revenge of the Sith, it's like, what the fuck? And yet you're writing a series about one of the most important characters in Star of all Star Wars, and you never seen Revenge of the Sith, and this is supposed to take place right after that? Makes no sense at all. It doesn't necessarily needs to not be part of the Skywalkers. It just needs that the Skywalker part, the fan service part, needs to be good. You know, and that's what like Avengers Endgame. Really, as a movie, it wasn't that great, but all the fan service and stuff was good. It was great. They didn't just like, oh, let's just do this part because it'd be really super cool. No, it made sense, and it ended up being cool. But yeah, I for the most part enjoyed the first 3 episodes of Andor. I do believe that it was a little slow. Episode 1 and 2 could have easily been made into one episode. Make it a little bit longer to fit in the stuff that you want to fit in, that you need to fit in, but it could have easily fit into one episode, and we could have episode 3 and stuff. And supposed to be 12 episodes, so I hope it doesn't drag out too much. Again, the creator of this is, what was his name again? Yeah, Tony Gilroy. He comes from film, so I hope this isn't something that they dragged out to make a TV series and stuff. So because that's one of the, as I said earlier, one of the problems with a lot of the Star Wars shows as well as Marvel shows. They all seem like they should have been movies that was split up into a series, but then they had to make actual scenes to fill in those time slots because it being stretched out. And I think it was Loki that just felt like it dragged and dragged. Wanda Vision felt like it dragged and dragged. They all felt like that. But yeah, what is your thoughts on Andor? Do you like it? Do you think this is gonna be, I don't think it's gonna be as good as The Mandalorian season 1, but I think it's gonna give it a pretty good run for its money. I think once we got to episode 3, it did pick up. The story did pick up. We started getting more action into it, and I think now that we get into that point where, like in the original A New Hope, after his aunt and uncle died, that's when his life turns around, and now we get into the fight, we get into the action, and I think that's where we at right now after episode 3. So I think it's gonna be good. I'm looking forward to seeing episode 4, and I would definitely be doing a season 1 review, and once it all finished. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that, and make sure you check out those links in the descriptions. As I said, there's my Star Wars fan comics, Kira, a Star Wars story. Got that last chapter of part 1 is be out by the time this episode is out, and then we're gonna be doing the web novel, and like I said, hopefully we do it turn into a comic book. And I also got many other ideas for short stories and comic books coming out as well. Maybe we do a Kickstarter on some of my original ones. Can't really do a Kickstarter on fan comics or fan fiction stuff, but we'll figure something out. But also there's my gear list, a link to my gear list. You can see a link to my gear list. If you ever want to be a YouTuber, podcaster, comic book artist, graphic design, I have a link here for all the things that I use for all that stuff, and mostly it's all from Amazon. So, and most of these things are pretty much best bang for your buck. Like my microphones are pretty cheap for how good they really are, and I got down here I show some good alternatives to what I have, and so that even better for bang for your buck. Like the Affinity Suite is a good alternative to Adobe 3D software, and each one of them only costs like $50. So where Adobe, it costs 60 something dollars a month. And also there is the Teespring website where you can get Geeking Around t-shirts and other merch stuff like hoodies. So yeah, make sure you check out The link's in the description. Make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell button so you get notified when a new episode comes out. And I will see you next time. Bye.